Minute, get on Zoom. Here we go. Welcome back, everyone, on this lovely Thursday, February 16th, to the House Committee on Government Operations, Military Affairs. Want to welcome Commissioner Wendy Knight, who's joining us to talk about our latest changes and maybe some suggestions on H127 sports wagering bill. So welcome.
Good morning. Wendy Knight, Commissioner of the Department of Liquor and Lottery. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. I know you have a busy schedule this morning. I really appreciate the work that you're doing on the sports wagering bill. I just have a couple of suggestions. If we could just walk through that, that would be great, and I won't take up too much time. On page 2, number 6, it says gross sports wagering revenue means gross sports wagering receipts, excluding bets, winnings, tax, etc. I think it might be clearer if you use the term adjusted sports wagering revenue. I was a little confused by the term gross there because you're talking about the gross receipts. So we have what's bets, right? What's paid out less the taxes. That I think we defined, at least in the sports betting study committee, I think it was adjusted. The next item is on page 6. Bottom of the page, we're talking about the self-exclusion program. I see throughout here, you've put the fantasy sports consumer protections, fine. This section here says for the self-exclusion program, sports wagering operators and fantasy sports contest operators. I know you're going to talk to the operators. Yes.
Can I just?
Yes.
Really sorry to interrupt you.
Sorry, no problem.
Could you post the draft? It's draft 1.3 was
Okay.
the recent draft. Sorry that I'm hearing
Okay.
you say which version of the bill.
Okay.
So, yeah, so
Also get that.
yeah, just let us get that up. It's dated February 8th is the most recent, I believe.
Yes. And I think that's something I know you have operators here today. I don't believe that fantasy sports operators use the self-exclusion list like sports betting operators. So that was just sort of flagging that. But again, you have operators here, so you can check with them on that.
While everybody gets this up, Commissioner, if I can just
Yes, sorry.
go back and
Sorry,
ask
yes.
you about the, I just want to make sure that I'm understanding what we're trying to get at with the definition of gross receipts versus adjusted. And we're talking about, that definition is really important because that's the amount that we're actually applying any revenue sharing.
Correct.
And it's my understanding that we're talking about the revenue share being calculated on everything less the winnings that are paid out and applicable taxes. That's what you're asking us to call adjusted.
That's my understanding of what that proper term is, but you have lawyers and you have operators, but when I read that, I was confused because the term that I recall us using last session and when we were talking about this bill in Senate Economic Development and the Sports Betting Study Committee was adjusted, right? To me, it's a general accounting concept. When you have gross receipts, that's the total money you get, less taxes you paid out or less whatever, then that becomes adjusted. But I don't want to spend too much time on that. I just wanted to flag it that to me, that gross sports wagering revenue term is a bit confusing to me. So it might, we always just want to be clear about especially that particular term, because as you mentioned, that's the amount that we're going to apply the percentage for the problem gambling, and that's the amount we're going to apply for the percentage of the state.
Great. Well, council's here and we'll flag that. Right. And I think in case anybody hasn't found it yet, the most recent draft is posted under Tucker's name, today's date for the committee. Sorry, Mr. Knight, thank you.
No problem. So I flagged the self-exclusion with fantasy sports operators. You might want to check with them to see how they handle their self-exclusion lists. Then the next thing I wanted to mention was,
Representative Tango has a quick.
I've already
Sorry.
one question.
Yes.
What page was that on?
that was my page 6. It's on page 6 at the bottom. And it talking about the self-exclusion program. We are talking about, at the bottom, the state's authorized sports wagering operators and fantasy sports contests operators. I'm only flagging that because my understanding is that this fantasy sports operators don't operate the self-exclusion list like sports betting.
Thank you.
So you might need to strike that particular section or clarify with the operators. Page 11. Again, I don't want to be nitpicky. I'm just pointing out maybe a different term to use other than proceeds. So I'm looking at proceeds to general fund. The proceeds received by the department from sports wagering, apologies, I used to be an editor and a writer, so I might be going down the rabbit hole too much, but I wonder if it should be revenue share, because that's the term we're using. Just a question, not a big issue. Then the next section is on page 14. Again, talking about revenue share. Each operator shall pay to the department a revenue share that is determined. I think you want to, at that point, insert by the department through the competitive bidding process, because it's the department that's going to determine that revenue share through that competitive bid process. So just let's be clear that it's the department that determines that.
That's top of page 14.
That's correct. Item D.
D, yeah. Yeah.
Page 22, the bottom, you're talking about now moving the registration for fantasy sports operators to the Secretary of State's office. My only question is, have you asked the opinion of the Secretary of State's office, how they feel about that?
So just a clarification, it is already registered with the Secretary of State's office.
I know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I guess my point is you're moving it, in this bill, as I read it, you're moving it from registering with the Secretary of State's office to registering with the Department of Liquor and Lottery. So we're fine with that. You're taking the $5,000 fee for registration from them to us. Like, are they okay with that? I don't know.
One of the key things that we're wrestling with here is, I think there's general consensus as we have been working on this, that there are some aspects of daily fantasy sports that should be brought in line as we go into having legal sports wagering, but that getting from here to there presents more challenges than I think we want to deal with the entirety of all of that in the space of this bill. So that's a good flag for one of the things that we have to sort of consider as we try to get this bill on its way. So,
and we, the department, we have no problem with registering or licensing. The term we use is we license operators, right? So we issue licenses and permits. We have an online licensing portal. So we could definitely create a registration for the fantasy sports operator and collect the fees. That's not a problem. We collect fees and issue licenses all the time for thousands of entities. Then on page 23, under the responsible gaming and problem gambling operator plans and duties, you've inserted and that the responsible gaming plan, the operators will send to us, the Department of Liquor and Lottery, as well as the Department of Mental Health. That's fine. We're obviously the department that has the contract with the operators, so we're going to be the regulatory authority. The Department of Mental Health is our partner in this in terms of responsible gaming. Further down, then you say the commissioner shall require. I think you need to be clear that it's the commissioner of the Department of Liquor and Lottery that's going to require each applicant to submit a responsible gaming plan, because that would be our responsibility as the authority that's contracting with the operators. And then,
I just want to get that reference.
sorry, it's the,
Page 23, line 18. Yeah.
thank you, the Commissioner of the Department of Liquor and Lottery, just to be clear, since you have two departments there.
Thank you.
And then on page 26, and I created these color-coded tables yesterday. Generally, I wanted to flag that it's better to fund the responsible gaming, problem gambling fund by increasing that percentage rather than artificially funding it with a floor. The problem right now I see with the math, with that $500,000 floor, is in order to cover that $500,000 floor, you would need, based on 2.5%, right? So you're trying to cover the $500,000 floor. If the revenue share is 2.5%, you're going to need the wagering revenue that comes to the department to be $20 million. If you're assuming a 50% revenue share, then the expectation to meet that 500,000 is you're going to need $40 million in revenue, which is not anything that anyone's projected. So I tried to, I wonder, Andrea, if you could put am I responsible for putting
We have the table.
Oh, good, thank you.
We're all looking.
Thanks. Okay, great. Thank you.
And this table, if you didn't find it already, is under Commissioner Knight's name on today's date. Yeah,
Yeah, and we don't need to get too much in the weeds. I just tried to visualize, if you're looking at that artificial $500,000 floor, basically based on the projections of JFO, you're going to end up with what I call a deficit, right? So you're not, the revenues are not actually going to meet that floor. So you're going to end up with a deficit. So that's just to show that artificially funding the responsible gaming fund, in our view, the administration view, is a less advantageous approach than actually just increasing. On the second table, you see if you just increase it to 5%, bring it from 2.5% of the revenue share that goes to the department, goes to responsible gaming, just increase that to 5%. That way you are organically growing your responsible gaming fund based on the growth of the actual revenues that we're getting from sports betting. So if you look at what I did is the year two estimate, year one estimate, and the original year one estimate. Remember that JFO is projecting that the state is going to receive $10 million potentially in year two, not year one. Their revised estimate says that year one is going to be 4.8 million. I just rounded to 5 million. And then their original estimate, based on whether it was many operators, high tax rate, that was 2.5 million. So if you look at what the problem gambling fund would be at 5%, you're looking at the year one estimate of 5,250,000, year two estimate of 10,500,000. The other thing to remember is that two things. My colleagues in mental health have talked about that this is going to take time to build up, right? Because right now we don't have sports betting that's legal. We have Vermont Lottery, a problem gambling program, but it's really not robust. We have a contract with the Howard Center. They themselves have identified that they're not experts in problem gambling. So we're really needing time to build up capacity to train the providers, to build up a text messaging program. So you're not going to need a $500,000 the first year. It's going to take them about a year to build all this up, right? Or it's going to take time. It's going to be stages. We've talked about the tiers of that. The other thing to note is that the Department of Liquor and Lottery currently has already budgeted for problem gambling for Vermont Lottery, $250,000. So that there is the seed money for the responsible gaming, and then that becomes your floor. Because what we've talked about, the Department of Liquor and Lottery and Department of Mental Health is we really want to combine the problem gambling, responsible gaming. When we, or if we pass sports betting, we really want to see Vermont Lottery, responsible gaming combined with the sports betting. And that it would be one program. So we already have $250,000 already in our budget that we can allocate to that. And then if you increase the percentage to 5%, then you're building that up organically. And then you have the potential to really grow some significant funds for that.
Representative Byron.
So just for clarity, you're saying use the 250K that already exists. Once we combine the two into one like cohesive program for problem gambling, that's the floor. Well, not the floor, sorry, I'm thinking.
It could be the floor.
Correctly, the floor,
Yeah.
sorry, budget.
Yeah.
But what we're gonna do is double, in theory, from 2.5 to 5.
Correct.
And then that will be what ramps it up
Correct.
to the desired 5.
Or more, or whatever. Correct.
5% is the threshold, is that correct?
I'm suggesting that you take 2.5% right now that's in the bill and make it
All
5%.
right, and 5 is where it would start growing, where that becomes possible, the growth.
Correct. So you start funding the responsible gaming fund at the 5% level. Knowing we already have 250,000, remember that becomes your seed money and your floor.
It makes sense in my head.
Sounds
Other
good.
question?
Just real good. So literally 5 cents of every dollar goes right into that fund, or is that not the way to look at it? Is that not that?
I don't think that's the math. I think it's 5%.
5% of what I think would.
The share,
Of the-
yes.
Our share.
Of our.
Yes, yes.
Not the total handle.
Got it.
Right.
So
Yeah.
whatever.
Smiling.
Yeah.
The total handles $50, we do 10, we keep
It's what our what our tax revenue comes in.
Yeah.
To the department, to the
Yeah.
city, 5% of that sum.
yeah, like I said, total bet's $50, we keep 10, we get 50 cents.
So we're gonna have
Yes.
Patrick, before we vote this bill out, we're gonna have Patrick from JFO weigh in on
Right.
this. And I want to really
Right.
make sure the committee is totally clear.
Makes sense.
On what the handle is, what the adjusted gross is, what the revenue share is, what the percentage is going to the fund, because that's an important thing, but we'll have Patrick come back in
Yeah.
and talk about that in the context of the hearing.
Excellent. One other thing, sorry. On the page 27, it's a report that the department is going to provide to the legislature. I would suggest or ask that you change that date to January 2025, because if it's January 2024, remember that I'm hoping that I'm going to be setting up a sports betting program for the rest of the year. So that the idea is January 2024. My focus is going to be on the sports betting. And you're asking me to put a report together on fantasy sports. I would like, or make it July or something, but I would make it another, give us more time to do that. The other thing I just want, and I know that you had someone from Chris Curtis from the AG's office here. I'm just pointing out in this, and I think he pointed that out to you as well on page 28. As I understand it, the AG's office has no compliance monitoring. So I see the term of compliance monitoring. I don't think I'm just flagging it. And then enforcement, my understanding again from the AG's office is the enforcement that they do is really, they get a consumer complaint and then they investigate. So this report, this details you're asking the department to put together is going to be based on what we can get from the AG's office, because we're not going to have any compliance monitoring.
Well, so to be really clear, regardless of what it says, words on the page, what I want, what I think we discussed in the committee is that right now, fantasy sports is for all intents and purposes, very similar in terms of the customer experience as the sports wagering will be in some ways. And I'm trying to say, like, if you have the same operator potentially,
Right.
and that's bound to
Right.
happen. It seems a little weird that they're operating daily fantasy sports. Vermonters are risking money on that particular activity on an app that has the same branding and is the same operator as one that may be one of the license holders
Right.
with sports wagering. And yet we have this like almost unregulated, no compliance monitoring activity over here where Vermonters are risking money. And then we have this much more regulated thing that would be in your shop
Right.
over here. And what I'm asking is for the department to come back with recommendations to bring the two things more into alignment.
I totally agree with that, and we could definitely do that.
Okay.
Give us a little more time.
Okay, so
Please.
So you're saying, so just so that I understand what you're recommending, you're asking us to say, hey, let us stand up the sports betting. January of 2024, that goes live. Give us until July to kind of
Right.
to come up with some policy recommendations, which would mean the legislature wouldn't have an opportunity until the session of 2025 to actually create statute to bring fantasy and sports wagering into some kind of combined regulatory environment, which wouldn't then go into effect at the earliest until July of 25.
Right. So you're hoping to make some changes next year on the fantasy sports and bring the fantasy sports and the sports betting more aligned. That's
Yeah, I guess what I'm a little
Yeah.
concerned about is
That's fine.
the awkwardness of a year and a half.
sure. That's fine. We'll figure it out.
Okay.
I rescind my request to change it to 2025.
Okay. I'm not, and I don't want to put undue burdens on the department. And maybe we could do it in some sort of a phased way where we're not asking you to get into every single aspect of it. But I do think it would be kind of weird to have a year and a half of legal
Yeah.
sports wagering, and we haven't thought at all really in a significant way about how the fantasy sports operation is kind of off to the side and just running as is.
Understood.
Higley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize for being late. I was at an LCAR meeting. We actually got out early. So just wondering, some of us has talked about our concern around, you had just mentioned that you're going to have this report come out maybe in July of next year in regards to fantasy sports betting. We, of course, in this bill appear to have included fantasy sports betting and the regular sports betting, raising that age level to 21.
Correct.
I don't know if anybody's mentioned it. Some of us have some concerns about that as far as what would a graduated eligibility look like as far as complications on your end and so on. Because I think, you know, I hate to see, 18-year-olds now being able to do this, yet
Right.
all of a sudden on whatever date this goes into effect, it's changed to 21. So any
I appreciate the question, and I haven't given much thought to that yet. I'm reading the bill. Honestly, I haven't, at this point, the department has no involvement with fantasy sports, and I have very little knowledge of it. My only introduction to it was this fall, basically, when we were talking about the sports betting study committee, and we were looking at fantasy sports and the consumer protections. So I can definitely give you my thoughts on what, implications that would be from raising fantasy sports from 18 to 21. I don't know. I mean, you would need to probably talk with the operators. They're the ones that have experience with those players. I don't think any regulatory body has any sense of who those players are in Vermont right now. I mean, the Secretary of State's office registers the companies, just like they register all kinds of companies. And if there's a complaint, the AG's office investigates. And that is my understanding of the extent of the state's involvement in fantasy sports.
Well, if we could, we did ask the AG's office the other day as far as the rulemaking process, and they said that they haven't really had any problems with the fantasy sports
Right.
issue. So,
Right.
But again, I just have a real concern that And these 18-year-olds currently that, and I don't know if we could ever find out a number, that are involved.
We have several of the operators
Okay.
who are going to be testifying next. So some of them may have fantasy sports as well as the desire to potentially be one of the license holders on the wagering. So they may be able to help us understand what that market looks like.
But I would certainly assume that those that do fantasy sports betting now would be the ones, I would think, first that would come into the, sports betting.
Sure, they would be a likely audience, a likely customer,
Anyway,
is my understanding.
thank you.
Representative Nugent, you had a question?
If it's okay to respond to your question, I think the tobacco control department would be to check in with around changing an age like that, since they've done a lot of work, around tobacco with the.
That would be the Department of Liquor and Lottery. Yeah, we regulate.
Well, BDH, in terms of like the science and like the health aspect of it.
Representative Hango.
I just want to respond to that by saying that, the use of tobacco is a health issue in terms of physical health. This use of wagering is a health concern from a mental health standpoint. I don't really see the correlation between tobacco and sports betting.
Oh, I don't think we should get into a debate here while we have the commissioner.
Just a comment.
But I think as we might have heard Representative Donahue on the floor, mental health and physical health, we're really trying to have one idea of what healthcare is. And I have significant concerns, and we have a big philosophical debate about that. I'm sure that we don't have time for it today, but I'm sure there are a variety of opinions on that, Representative Hancock. Okay. So, Commissioner Knight, I think where I'm realizing that trying to do too much in the context of this bill with fantasy sports is something that I'm going to have some caution on as we get into the final drafts of the bill. And so taking your comments to heart, I'll be in touch with you probably offline and send you where I think a draft that is a little bit less prescriptive than this on the fantasy sports side when we start to get ready to get this bill on its way.
Sounds good. And philosophically, I completely agree with what you're trying to achieve with making sure that fantasy sports and sports betting, becomes a little more unified.
Thank you for, it's an awkward thing to know we have this legal thing that kind of looks the same, and we're trying to make this other thing legal that is very, it will be kind of similar, and figuring out how to make the two things line up is awkward in statute. So I appreciate you helping us there.
Just based on my experience with the liquor statutes, I'm very cautious about what we put in statute and what language we put in statute, because my experience has shown that the things evolve, and the mechanism to change statute is laborious, right? Like, so this is a really dynamic market. So is the liquor, industry. And so when you have things in statute and technology changes, or people evolve, or industries evolve, science evolves, it becomes more difficult to really have those laws be kind of keeping pace with all of the societal changes.
And I think regardless of what we put in here in regard to fantasy sports, if this bill makes it all the way through, everyone should know that I, as the chair of this committee next year, will definitely want us to come back, look at how it's going with you, Commissioner Knight, and say, all right, so what about fantasy sports? How is that going? What are Vermonters experiencing? And we'll definitely be continuing to work on this next year, regardless of what happens. Great. Anything else you'd like to comment on?
No, those are all my only comments. And if you have any other questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
Anybody else?
Get back to you.
For Commissioner Knight. Thank you for being with us early.
My pleasure, of course. Beautiful drive.
Yeah, and we'll be in touch as we try to incorporate some of your recommendations in this conversation this morning in the next draft.
Excellent. I'm available.
Right. So we have with us today folks who represent some operators of sports wagering. And I believe Nick Arcuri is going to be first, and he's going to be here remotely. So Mr. Arcuri, I hope I'm saying your name right.
Yep.
Welcome. Could you introduce yourself and the organization that you're with for the record?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Nick Arcuri. You pronounce it perfectly. I'm with Caesars Sportsbook and Casino, based out of New Jersey, and happy to be here. And I thank you, Chairman and committee members for having me.
Thanks. And I believe that you've prepared with us a demo of how the sportsbook that Caesars has looks and operates, and that Andrea, our fabulous committee assistant, has given you screen sharing ability. So we're going to eschew our usual practice of only looking at our own electronic devices so that we can see your demo up on Zoom.
Okay, great. I have a quick opening just to give you a little more background on Caesars, which I'm sure you know a little bit about, but as I mentioned, I'm Nick Arcuri. I've been with Caesars for 4 years. Product lead, basically for all mobile betting products, specifically your sportsbook that you use either on your phone or laptop. So I've been here since 2019, launched the first state for our brand new platform, which we created from scratch and developed from scratch. And since then, in those 4 years, we've launched that platform in 20 plus states and one Canadian province of Ontario. We've taken over 1 billion bets. But I think the thing we're most proud of is working closely with regulators and responsible gaming experts to not just be an operator, but a partner in shaping the sports betting industry. Since it is so new to the United States, we think it's important, not only from a financial business perspective, but we want to obviously promote safe and responsible gaming for fun, not for any other purpose other than just having fun. So as you mentioned, I will do a full demonstration of the product and the responsible gaming features that we have. I'll also talk about some of the other opportunities and things that we're looking to add in the future. Very near future, we'll have some announcements coming, which you'll hear probably. And I look forward to doing that. And I want it to be an open conversation. So, any questions along the way, if you can't see my screen, if I freeze, anything like that, let me know. If you have questions on what I'm showing, I will try to go slowly, and just let me know. And I hope this will help you guys in hopefully bringing safe and responsible gaming, sports betting to Vermont, a state that I will be visiting next week. It's too bad it wasn't next week. I have a ski trip planned to Mount Snow. And I visit Vermont probably once or twice a year for snowboarding since since I was 12 years old. So I'm excited to talk to you guys today.
Well, thanks for being with us.
All right. So I will share my screen and just let me know when you can see it. Let me know if it's too big or small, and we'll go from there. Can you guys see that okay?
Guessing that if you increase the zoom by like 10 or 20%, it'll probably be a little better for us. Yeah, that I think.
Maybe give me one more.
One more. Okay.
There we go.
Yeah, I think that
great.
captures all the active stuff on the screen. That's the stuff in good resolution. Thank you.
All right, not a problem. So what we're looking at here is actually a test environment. So it's not a production or live environment to any of our users. I'm actually looking at West Virginia right now. I have the ability to change to any state. I'll basically take you through quickly what's on the screen, and then take you through a few other key features and functionality that are very important to our users and very important to the state regulators as well. So on the screen here, at the very top, we have our primary navigation. So we have information telling you welcome and home of Caesars Rewards. We have a global rewards program for both our online and in-person brick and mortar players. We have members across, I think we're at 50 million members across the United States. We have members in every single state, and we're proud of that. It provides rewards and certain incentives for users to play with us. It's a loyalty program, just like your normal airline program. I'll show you a little bit about that in a second. I mention it because it not only is a loyalty program, but is also something we use specifically for responsible gaming. We can globally look at a user's account across multiple states and their in-person play to spot problem gambling. We can also use it, and I think we are working on this, and this is the announcement I teased earlier that we will be using in the near coming months, our global program to actually be able to self-exclude a gambler or a particular user in one state across all of our products and locations. So that's not something that's required by any jurisdiction, but it's something that we are proud to be working on and to be implementing in 2023, which means if you've said you've had a problem in the state of New York, you can't just go across state lines to New Jersey and sign up with another operator or Caesars there. We will know that you've said you've had a problem in one state, and we will make sure you are not able to deposit, sign up in another state, which is, I think, a big step forward in the industry and something we're super proud of and something that we're going to be announcing in March. And the timeline for that rollout will be in 2023. And I'll take you through the responsible gaming and how you can actually set those limits in a moment. Here you have the ability to search. In West Virginia, there is casino, so we have a casino area here. We have our support section, and I'll just open that quickly. We have a live chat that's both with an in-person chat, and we also have a chat bot. So if you have really quick questions, you can open that up and you'll get your answers. Otherwise, we connect you to a live person at any time, or you can email or use the help section. These are important things for any of our users having issues or problems with the product itself or any of the features, or they have questions for any reason. I mentioned our 20 jurisdictions. There they all are, right there. So I'm in West Virginia, but I can change to any of these states and log in. That does not mean I will be able to bet in those states. I have to obviously be present in that state. We work with a company called GeoComply, which I believe gave you guys testimony earlier. And they do an excellent job, world-class, in making sure the person is where they are when they are attempting to deposit or place a bet. You are allowed to log in when you're not in another state. If you want to, I'm sure I might log in next week in Vermont, but I won't be able to place a bet or deposit. I might just be looking at my account information. I can withdraw from a different state. You don't have to be in the state to withdraw. Then responsible gaming, I'll click on this quickly. Each state has their own responsible gaming information. This one we're looking at is West Virginia. So you have all your information about limit setting, your self-exclusion, which I'll go in a lot more detail and show you these pages. Your opt-out program, how to opt out completely. And then it's telling you all your gambling controls. What can I do? You can set a deposit limit, a spend limit, a daily time limit. Other states have a single bet limit. Certain states have different things around. They have things around cool off, which most states have, and that's I need a day, 3 days, up to 365 days in some states. This in West Virginia, it's 30 days, where you won't be able to access your account, but you are not kind of excluding out for the next year or two, which is what happens in the self-exclude program. And then self-exclude here. Okay, and just from the actual sports betting perspective, we have a list of sports on the side. If you open any of these, you can see the different kind of competitions. For basketball, we're showing NBA and college basketball here. At the top, we have the ability to scroll through all the different sports we have providing. This is a test account, so it's probably some interesting ones in here that we're testing: snooker, darts. These are things that we do provide in certain jurisdictions. So you can go in there and see what's available in all those different sports. Here we have a banner. So this could tell you information about a promotion, a key event that's coming up. Obviously for Super Bowl last weekend. Lots of information about the Chiefs-Eagles game here. And then finally, you have an event to actually place a bet on. So we have this made-up event. This is not happening. It's definitely not live. Detroit Lions versus the Las Vegas Raiders. We have information about this is your spread, money line, meaning the winner of the game, and then points, total points in the game that are scored by both teams. And if I click on one of these, on the right side here, you'll see this bet show up. And I'm not logged in right now. So it's going to tell me I'm taking the Detroit Lions -3.5. That means I have to win by 4 or more for me to win that bet. I can put a stake in here. If I put $1, it tells me it's going to pay $1.60. And since I'm not logged in, it's going to ask me to log in to place the bet. I'm not going to do that just now. I'm going to close that up. But this is the bet slip. This is where you place your bets. You basically come up with your ideas, put in how much you want to bet on each, and understand how much it'll pay out. Any questions so far before I move into the next portion, which I want to go through the registration process and show you guys what that looks like?
Yeah, can I just ask for states that are, requiring certain public health messaging and that kind of thing, how is Caesars incorporating, those kinds of messages?
Yeah, so there's actually 2 or more places we can add that. So usually those messages will come during the registration process. You can see in one or two of those pages will have information about that you would have to read and agree to with a checkbox. I think West Virginia has something similar to that, which you'll show. Also, if you change that, update that, or just have a rule that every week, every month, we want to, remind users of their limits and responsible gaming on their login. And Massachusetts is doing this every month when a user logs in. If they don't have limits set, we gently give them a screenshot to tell them, hey, you haven't set your limits. Please acknowledge that you don't want to set limits, and a direct link to actually set those limits. So that's on a monthly basis in Massachusetts. Other jurisdictions do it, on a 6-month basis, 30-day basis. It's up to the jurisdiction. We have all of those controls in place in order to provide the user that information to align with the regulations for that particular state.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to make sure the committee knows it's okay to stop and ask a question. Representative?
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you. In that circumstance where you put the reminder out, what's your delete and move on as opposed to actually perform the function ratio?
So in Massachusetts right now, we haven't gone live with that functionality. So I can't give you the monthly one. The other state that we do have it in on the reminders, Pennsylvania, they actually don't allow you have to acknowledge it. So it's 100% acknowledgement, but the actual percentage of people that set their limits in general, I would have to look exactly at the numbers, but it's 10 to 20% off of those messages actually set their limits.
And does that decision remain in effect until it's changed, or do you have a window that it closes and has to be reasserted?
Yeah, so depending on the state, so Massachusetts, every month, if you do not have a limit, if you now have a limit set, it's going to ask those remaining users that don't have limits set, hey, set your limit. And hopefully, 10 or 20% each time, we'll get a good majority of people with limitations set.
Nick, I think what Representative Hooper was getting at was once the bettor sets their limits, do those limits stay in effect sort of permanently until the actual user changes them?
Yes, they do. Sorry. Yes, they do. They will not go out of effect unless the user changes it. And I'll talk through how that works. But basically, if anytime they lower their limit, so if they have a limit of $200 and they go to 100, that takes effect immediately. So anytime you make your gaming limits stricter for yourself, and let's say more responsible, it goes in effect right away. Anytime you try to increase your limit, you will have a waiting period. And depending on the jurisdiction, that waiting period might be a day, a week, a month before those go into effect. Massachusetts also, I think Massachusetts has been leading the charge with some of these. They will actually give you a reminder if you've increased your limit prior to the increase of the limit, 24 hours or 72 hours, depending on the limit that is changed, and actually makes you acknowledge that you still want to increase your limit before it actually goes up, which I think is a really smart idea, because at the moment you can say, I want to increase it from 500 to 1,000 weekly. And then a couple of days later, we're going to ask you again, you sure you want to do this? And they might have changed their mind. And actually 500 is right for me. I'm going to cancel that increase. So Massachusetts has that in place. We're launching there in about 2 or 3 weeks. So we're excited to see that usage, and hopefully it will bear some fruit of people actually, thinking twice about increasing that limit.
Representative Hooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you have any jurisdictions that actually cap the amount that an individual can bet in any period?
There is, I don't know exactly. I think New Jersey has I don't think it caps, but it does tell you of your overall spend when you reach $1,500. It does tell you that, but it does not stop you from going. You do have to acknowledge that you have spent $1,500 over the course of your membership, but they do not stop you. So I do not believe there is any jurisdiction at the moment that caps your spend or deposits as a rule across the state.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thanks, Nick. I appreciate your willingness to take questions in the middle of the presentation, but we don't want to hold you up indefinitely. So please continue.
No problem. I think the questions are super important, and we'll get into some of the details on them. So let's go through a registration. So I'm going to click this here. I do have a sign in, but I'm not going to sign in yet. I'm actually going to hit this register now button. And you're going to see a simple sign up page here. So first and foremost, you have your email address and privacy policy. So before you even go through step one, you do have the privacy policy about how we can or will use your information. And if you're uncomfortable with that, you don't have to obviously sign up. So I'll just put in my information here. I don't have a promotion code, so I'll hit next. And so we're talking about security. So we like to be kind of personal here. We need some information for you to reset your password in case you lose access to your account. So I can just put in any password here. It's also giving me information with that. You can see that yellow to green bar to tell you that you're creating a strong enough password. And that can be set per state. West Virginia has a pretty simple one, but you can add characters and other things to make it a more complex and secure password. And then you can add your phone number. and then hit next.
Representative Chase has a question.
Sure.
Password security, how prevalent is account theft and hacking in your industry compared to digital security in general?
I would say it's about equal. There has been, recently, if you've read the news, some of the operators have had what they call account stuffing attacks, where people have lost control of their information and their password. That happened to a couple of our operators. It did not happen for us. We have a good enough amount of security. There is some ways I can tell you to actually prevent that. What we call multi-factor authentication. And I'm sure if you have a bank and you ever use online banking, you either you get a text with a 6-digit number that you have to confirm, and that goes to your cell phone. There's also email text, and even more secure, they have something called authenticator applications, which changes that number every 30 seconds. And you have to put that in. And what that will prevent is, even if someone has your username and password, if they try to log on to your account from a different device, something that hasn't logged on to your account ever before, they will be prompted with that information. And unless they have access to your phone, they will not be able to get that number, and they will not be able to log in. So something Caesars does across the board in every single state is, the first time a user logs in to their account from a new device, we always ask them for that 6-digit code, which gets sent via text or email. And even if you're logging in from the same phone, every 30 days, we're going to check no matter what. And New Jersey added that functionality a few months ago, and we saw it as important across the board. So we instituted it across every single state to require that what they call multi-factor authentication, which does a very good job of preventing any account theft.
Okay, and people can use the authenticator apps instead of the text code as an option, or is that a state regulation? And
it's by operator. It's operator by operator. We have not implemented it anywhere just yet. We do see a little bit of we have user tested to check, we didn't see a lot of people actually having those authenticator applications. Less than 5% of the people that we surveyed had them. So at this time, we haven't implemented it, but it's something that we are still always looking at as they become more popular with users. And I think it will and should. I use it on many of my accounts where it is offered. But I think as it becomes more popular, we will look again to implement that as an option.
So I want to say we have an hour until our joint assembly. I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on multi-factor identification, because I think that's not the most salient thing here. I do want to make sure that we're doing best practices for security, but I think that's more the DLL's job to make sure that the operators are doing. So I want to move beyond this, but yes, Representative Cooper.
I think I heard you say, if you try to sign into your account from somebody else's phone, it goes into a subroutine. Is that based on the phone number, or is that based on some other electronic signature?
Yeah, it's an electronic signature of the phone. We actually know the device, even your laptop. We save the last one that had a successful login, and if it changes, that's when it's going to send you that new code.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, moving on. I'll go through registration very quickly, but I do want to show, we have this area here, and this is to tell you, we're asking for this personal information because we want to verify your identity and keep you safe. So, and make sure you're over 21. So hitting next here, it's going to ask me for my name, so I'll just quickly go through here, date of birth. You guys will all know how old I am. And then last, I'm going to hit hide. Okay. And then home address, and this is important. We have a autofill here on home address. This helps with getting the correct address. And and the next step, when I hit next here, it's going to go through your know your customer information to make sure this customer is a real person that matches their last 4 digits of social, their date of birth, etc. So someone is not trying to take your identity and use it to sign up for an account.
Representative Higley.
Yeah, Nick, just real quick, I noticed that you said it was a verification to prove that you're 21 or over. Are there any states that you deal with that have 18 age?
Ontario, I believe, is 19. But no US states are 18. I think we are working with Puerto Rico, who is looking to have 18, but we are the only state we have the ability is 19, and it's not state, it's Ontario in Canada.
Thank you.
All right, and so this is some of this acknowledgement that from the terms and conditions that I have here. So I'm going to acknowledge all these things. And now it's doing a check. We're using LexisNexis, which is a third party, and some other third parties to check this. Now, this is a lower environment, a non-production environment. So I have a feeling this might not work. Oh, it did. Okay, great. Oh no, it didn't work. So it says the account is created, but we need to verify information. I won't be going through this, but if for whatever reason, your information does not check out, this is the process you would actually go through. I won't go through it all, but you would take a selfie, you would show your, you would take a picture of your government ID front and back. And we actually have a machine learning tool that actually matches your face to the government ID. To say you're approved or not, to say who you are, along with matching it to all the information that you've put in there. So I'm not going to go through this because we are a little short on time, but this is kind of the next step of that process. And if you have a problem, you can either go to a location or call our customer support to provide those details to get verified on your account.
So the requirement, I just want to root the committee in the bill. We'll all remember the very funny conversation we had with legislative counsel about a contemporaneous photo, AKA a selfie, and the photo ID that go together. This is part of the basic requirement we're laying out there. You're trying to avoid defining selfie in statute.
Yeah, we call it selfie, but it is a photo of yourself. Yeah.
Just to follow, we have a brief pause here. Air traffic control to the chair. Due to the time constraints, once we're done doing the login portion, do you want to just take a look at the problem gaming pictures?
Yes. We do need to move this along.
Yeah.
All right. Let me do exactly that. That was going to be my next step anyway. So
all right, we're all on the same page.
Going to log out of this unverified account, and I'm going to log into a verified account. This moment here. So I'm putting in, this is a test account. I'm going to sign in here. All right. It's giving me location verified. This is a whitelisted account. So from here, I'm now signed into Michael's account. This is one of my lead testers. I'm using their account, showing me their account balance here. If I click into this area here, it's going to show me a few things. It's going to show me my cash balance. It's going to show me my bonus balance and a few other things for the account. So my account, which gives you information about your history and your profile information, preferences of how you things want to look and feel. And I'll show you quickly here. We do have the 2-factor authentication, which I can turn on myself every single login if I'd like. So that's something I can do for increased security just for my own account. Bonuses if you have any, and then most importantly, let's go into responsible gaming here. So in the responsible gaming section, we have 5 different areas. We have our gaming history. So it tells you any change you've ever made. So I'll click in here. We should have some history. So on August 30th, this account changed their daily account deposit limit to 600 at this exact time. So this is obviously important, so you can check on that. It's important as well from the regulation perspective. This is all sent to the state as well. Information, this is going to go to that website that I showed before with all the terms and conditions and any help around responsible gaming. And then we'll go through these three sections in more detail. So the first one I'll go through, actually, I'm going to go this way. Self-exclusion. So this is when a user says, I have a problem. I do not want to be able to gamble anymore in this state. If I click this here, it's going to give you information. There's a 4-step process to do this and be part of, we're calling it Caesar's Internet Self-Exclusion Program. It's not just for the state of West Virginia. And it shows you all your information here. And you have two options. You can self-exclude in this case, just from Caesar's Sportsbook, or you can self-exclude from the entire state. Some states, there's no option. When you self-exclude in New Jersey, you are self-excluding across all operators. And every single morning, there is a list of people that have self-excluded that every operator is required to download. And that will make sure everyone has the most up-to-date list of information from people that have self-excluded. So if someone, one of the other operators, someone self-excludes, and then they go the next day and try to sign up with us, they will not be able to create an account, and we'll tell them that you have been self-excluded in the state of New Jersey. So that's an important one. And then what we are going to do, I mentioned before, is in the near future, self-exclude across any state for Caesar's Sportsbook, along with our brick and mortar casino locations. If you try to use your player card, we will also prevent you from gambling, which we think is a big step forward from a universal perspective, because people do go state to state to get around maybe their limitations, because they might have an actual, if they have a gambling problem. That's some things that there's some behaviors that we do see. I'm not going to self-exclude because that would kind of kill my entire demo here. Next one, cool off. So this is more of a short-term cool off, and this is mostly cooling off. It is in every state, I believe, is just for the single operator and just for your account there. You have the ability to cool off. In West Virginia, it's 3 to 30 days. So if I choose one of these, I can hit apply. And if I try to log in, I will be able to log in, but I won't be able to do anything other than withdraw money. And we tell you that you can still log in and withdraw your funds, but you won't be able to deposit. You won't be able to bet until those 4 days are over. And we have that apply button. So again, I'm not going to go through that, but that is a kind of a step that we like to urge users to do, so they can take a break, basically. And then gaming limits. This is the most important one of all. In West Virginia, we have 3 gaming limits that you can set, and they're set based on different time periods. So account deposit limits. So this is how much you can deposit in your account on a daily basis, a weekly basis, and a monthly basis. I'll show you how this works in a second. Then spend limits. This is how much you can spend on a daily basis, a weekly basis, or a monthly basis. And then lastly, you have a daily time limit. How much time can you actually spend logged into your account per day? So any of these, if I make a change, and I'll show you quickly how we do that. So first and foremost, I'm going to show you how to increase a limit. So if I increase this daily deposit limit, I want to say I want to deposit $1,000 a day for whatever reason. We're going to be able to put that in there. And then when I hit apply, it's going to tell me that this will become effective tomorrow. Because it is a daily limit, it would be tomorrow. If I change my weekly limit, it would be the next week, a week from that day. If I change my monthly limit, it's going to be a month from that day that you can increase. And as I mentioned, in Massachusetts, they're adding that reminder 24 or 72 hours before that limitation goes in place. Hey, you've increased your limit. It's going to take effect in 24 or 72 hours. Please acknowledge that you still want to do this. If not, cancel that change. So that's a nice thing that Massachusetts is putting in place. and I'll confirm that.
Nick, Representative Boyden has a quick question.
Yeah, sure.
Are you locked into these limits for a set period of time, or if like the day after they go into effect, can you go back into your account and just get rid of them?
Reestablish.
Yeah.
You can reestablish. So this limit here. So I'll show you right now. If I want to lower my limit, I can override this $1,000 that was about to go in effect tomorrow. When you lower your limit, it takes place right away. So there's no information about it's going to take place at this time. As soon as I hit confirm, my limit is now $200. And so if I try to increase it back to 1,000, I'm gonna have to wait another day on the daily limit, a week on the weekly limit, a month on the monthly limit. So anytime you're being more strict with your limits, we put those in effect right away. Anytime you're trying to increase your limits, there are time periods that you have to wait before you can do that.
Thank you.
And so I'll just quickly add these just to show you guys, what it looks like. Yeah, 10,000 is way too high on the spend limit. 100. Let's do 100, 200, and 500 here. And then I also do a time limit of 2 hours. So when I hit apply, you'll see a couple of these. Since I'm lowering every single one, they're all going to take effect immediately. So I'm going to hit that. And those have all now taken effect. And I'll show you how they work when you're actually trying to place a bet. So any questions on this screen before we move on and actually show them in action? The one I'm going to show you guys is this daily limit of 100. I'll show you how that works.
Don't see any questions. Yeah, keep going.
Okay. All right. So moving off of this screen. So we just set that daily limit of 100. I'm going to go find an event. Let's see. Looks like my other event fell off. Okay, here it is. So we're going to place that same bet here. I'm going to show you a couple different things here. So we have that $100 daily limit at the moment. I don't think I placed a bet yet. So I'm going to put a $50 bet to start. So this should go through. It's less than my limit. So I'm going to put my $50 bet. I'm going to place that bet. It's communicating with our, oh no, we got a trading limit. Hold on. This is a test account. Sorry about this. So basically what is happening here, and this is a good example, if we've put a limit on a user, this goes to our traders and they actually look at this bet and they either confirm it or don't confirm it. And this can be done for many reasons. Sometimes financial, sometimes we think someone has information. So we kind of review their bets if they're at a certain limit. Never does it happen at $50. It's usually 10,000, $1,000 or $20,000 at that. So let me do the following. Let me try a $101 bet. All right, let me quickly refresh here. Apologies for that. Oh, and they logged me off. Okay. All right. All right, now I'm here. $101. I'm going to try to place this bet. So here, trying to place the bet, this bet would exceed your previously set responsible gaming limits. It does not let me place the $100 bet. And what I was going to try to show you guys, and I'll show you a dollar bet. I think a dollar bet will go through. I hope it will go through. Otherwise, we have it's on this person very low. Okay, the dollar bet went through. So you see your dollar wager. It's a success on the Detroit Lions. The payout if I win is $1.60 plus my dollar. So that's what you're seeing here. And what I was trying to do before is put a $50 bet and then a $51 bet to show you kind of that it is not just a single bet. It is a cumulative bet during that time period of a single day. And the time period starts at 5 a.m. and goes through the next, 4:59 of the next day. we can set that based on the state. So this dollar bet goes through, but the $101 bet does not, because it hits your limit and you cannot place that bet over your limit.
Nick, we're running up on time, and I know we have one more demo that I really want to get to here. So is there anything else you kind of want to leave us with before we move on and take a look at another operator's platform?
No, I mean, that was the big thing. I wanted to show you guys through the responsible gaming. I want to show you the security of the login and registration process. I mentioned the Caesars rewards and how we're going to use that as a global self-exclude and global responsible gaming across all of our jurisdictions, which we think we will be the first in the country to do that, unless someone happens to beat us to the punch there, but we'll be the first to announce it, of course. And I really do appreciate everyone's time. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me, and I'm happy to testify again with this committee.
Gotta be yes or no.
Yeah, a quick question from Representative Hooper to close us out.
Nick, do you have are these singular accounts, or can more than one person access the same account? Most of the protections you've described so far are user initiated. If Mike's wife says he can do this, but she wants access to his timeout, things like that, is that possible in this?
Technically, we can't tie let's say two phone numbers for both of those numbers to be able to access the account. Now, if Mike's wife says, hey, here's my information, set it for me, and I can use that account, but there's no way currently, this is not something we can build anything with software. It just takes some time and effort. There is a way to do that technically, but we do not have a way for two people to access the same account in the circumstance you're talking about, or basically in any circumstance. We're really trying to prevent that. And we actually see the opposite. Sometimes we see someone signing up for their significant other so they can have two accounts. And that's something we also look at from a responsible gaming perspective.
Thank you.
Right. Well, thank you for being with us today, Nick. I'd like to invite Rebecca London to come and join us. And I think you're going to do a screen share.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good morning, Chair McCarthy, members of the committee. My name is Rebecca London. I'm a government affairs manager at DraftKings. And as the chair said, I had planned on doing a demonstration of our product and specifically focusing on our responsible gaming tools. Ours are very similar to Caesars. So if you prefer, I'm more than happy to just open myself up to questions from the committee and hit some talking points before that. Or I can quickly run through our account sign up process and our responsible gaming tools, totally up to the committee.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we get the general sense that these platforms have similar login. I think we had one concern raised from Representative Chase that we'd like to see, best practices in terms of password controls and multi-factor verification. So we might put some kind of reference for that in the bill if we don't already have that. I have to think about that a little bit. But I guess that would be my initial question: is if there's any, if your operator would have any issue with us sort of requiring kind of minimum best practices for some of those cybersecurity and identity.
No, we wouldn't. I mean, we take that sort of those issues very seriously. We do require two-factor authentication. Actually, when I was preparing to show you my product, I received multiple text messages with the code to log on. So I was trying to go through the process myself this morning. So, that's something that we don't have concerns on because that is something that we have implemented across jurisdictions, recognizing the importance of the security of our users' data.
Representative Hickey.
Yeah, so one thing that wasn't discussed was actual how payments are made. Can they be through credit cards, debit cards? And then how's the money, again, transferred back to you as a winner?
Yeah, that's a great question, Representative. So the way that we do it is jurisdictional and it is typically statutory with additional regulator discretion on allowable payment types. But we typically see ACH, debit card, credit card, funding through promos, funding through prepaid like gift cards as well, as all as allowable forms of funding an account. And that is, that's a section in your account settings where you go in and you include your card information so that you can. And to be clear, DraftKings, we have the same standards as banks do when it comes to security around payment processing. So we take that piece really seriously as well. And then in terms of the withdrawal process, that's also you can select where you withdraw to, the payment form that you prefer, and then you select payment, you select withdraw, and then that money is returned to the user. And that's where we see the importance of the legal market, because we have typically, whether in statute or in regulation, are required to segregate player funds. So we have enough money to guarantee that we can pay out our winners. And that is separate from our operational funds. That's not something that's guaranteed in the illegal market. And we find that that's the biggest issue. One of the biggest issues with the illegal market is not being guaranteed, or being having to jump through hoops to withdraw. So maybe you're only allowed to withdraw a set amount of money at a certain amount of time, $100 at a time, or I think the study committee heard someone was asked to withdraw their money in crypto this fall. So, just jumping through those sort of hoops, which we don't require our users to do.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Representative Hooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the worst possible world, where an 11-year-old kid hacks your system, if I've gone into Penny's or something and they buy a bunch of stuff on my credit card, too bad for them. Is that same situation in your transactions, where if something untoward happens, it doesn't fall back on the account owner?
So that's why we encourage the two-factor authentication. And so that way, there's sort of two things to prevent that. One is the two-factor authentication.
I understand that.
Yep.
But the 11-year-old kid is smarter than we think, so he gets through both walls.
I don't have kids, but that's what I hear about 11-year-olds these days. And then the other thing is that because we have all of the users' account data, we can identify anomalous either funding of accounts and wagering. So if the 11-year-old, if you typically put maybe $10 on each of your wagers, and then all of a sudden this 11-year-old is going in and putting $1,000 on a wager, that piece will pick up, and we will identify as anomalous, and we'll reach out to you and to say, hey, this is not your normal behavior. Also, that's where the deposit limits that Nick was talking about come in, both deposit and wager limits, to prevent something like that happening.
Representative Nugent.
I'm going to leave the Zoom so that way, since I'm not sharing my screen anymore. So, yes.
Do you get into situations where people owe you money that they can't pay back? And how does that, how are disputes handled also?
So, in terms of your first question, the answer is we don't allow our customers to wager on credit. So you have to fund the account with funds that you have, which is another major difference between the illegal market, right? And then the second, can you repeat your second question? I'm sorry.
When you have disputes.
Oh, disputes, sure.
How are those handled?
Yep. So what we do is we have helplines, and within our terms of service, we also dictate how disputes are how a customer raises those disputes, and how the rough outline of how we handle that. And then if the user doesn't feel that we have satisfactorily resolved the issue, that's also where the regulator comes in and the consumer has the opportunity to raise those issues with our regulator, in this case DLL, and would be able to go to them and raise concerns, and then we would have to work through the regulator on dispute resolution.
Representative Wood.
So I attempted to make an account on your platform recently, and I didn't end up making an account because it rejected my ID, but it didn't ask for me to take a selfie, but it did ask for me to submit like proof of residence through like a utility invoice or bank statement. Is there a reason why you don't require a selfie?
So there are different steps in the verification process. So it may just have been that you hadn't, we were going to attempt to verify your identity through your bill process. And then if that still didn't work, there are further options down the line in terms of that. You're welcome.
Any other questions or anything that you'd like to share with us about your platform and the bill itself?
So I actually have two colleagues here from two other operators. DraftKings is part of an association, the Sports Betting Alliance. We partner with three other companies, BetMGM, FanDuel, and Fanatics. So you're going to hear from BetMGM and FanDuel on a couple of issues that we'd like to talk with you all about that we feel that from our perspective, industry perspective, creates an environment that really encourages a strong business environment that will provide the best opportunities for consumers to truly take advantage of this form of entertainment. What I would say is, from our perspectives, DraftKings is live in 20 states with online sports betting. So we have the experience to where we see good partnerships with the state and how we can provide strong products and competitive markets that fully capture the illegal market and continue to have sustained growth in this area. So I will turn it over to my colleague, Rob O'Connor. And then, as questions come up, feel free to ask. Thank you.
Welcome, Rob. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair McCarthy. Thanks, members. I have a written statement. I'm going to abbreviate it for your causes, for your reasons. I'm Rob O'Connor, Vice President of Government Industry for MGM, BetMGM. We're a joint venture, an omni-channel provider, much like Caesars was talking about, the known casino from Las Vegas. We joined with Entain to form BetMGM. We maintain 13% of the current market of states that we're in. So FanDuel is the number one player in the market. DraftKings is second. MGM is usually third. The main thing I'm here to talk about is in your bill, in H127, there's a minimum of 2 operators considered and a maximum of 6. I'm here to try to implore you to bring the minimum up to 4. We've seen examples where if there's too few operators, it just doesn't work out as well. There are examples from different states. I've written some of them down, but again, I'm not going to go through them. We also have states, Tennessee, Virginia, that don't have a gaming history similar to Vermont. They were able to do this with multiple operators. And we just feel strongly that the more operators, the more choices, the happier your constituents are going to be, because they're going to be able to use the apps that they use. I'll reference the briefing you got last week from the geolocation company. If you remember, 66% of the users in your state that tried to access went to New York, and where there's 9 operators. The other 33% went to Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and then New Hampshire, where there's 1 operator. So I'm just here to make the point that I think consumer demand says give people what they want. Give the consumers in your state, give your constituents the opportunity to use the apps that they want to use. And we feel confident that in a competitive market, a competitive RFP process, that whoever the 4 get chosen, your consumers, your constituents will have consumer choice and they won't be limited. And then also the limitation expands to the things that we're concerned about: responsible gaming, consumer protection.
the higher the quality of the users, of the operators that you choose, the stronger those components. I'm summarizing. I had 2.5 pages to read. I didn't read any of it. I'm happy to take your questions and also rely on my colleagues to help me answer if there's any trouble.
Representative Waters Evans, and then we'll go to the side of the table. Go ahead.
Hi, could you give me, actually, I would like a specific example of how it would benefit
So DC.
consumer to have more than two options?
Well, DC chose to build their own app and chose one company.
Mm-hmm.
It's failing miserably. The company was fined $500,000.
Something like that, yeah.
Their app went down on Super Bowl Sunday. DC residents were not able to bet because they didn't have, and again, I'm not here to say it's only the big guys can do this. I'm not saying that, but I'm giving you examples of so DC was one where there was one operator and it did not go well. And there's other examples. Arkansas is struggling. They've chosen Arkansas is struggling. They've chosen one operator. And there's other examples also. Wyoming, a similar state in yours to population, probably not culture, but in population, also allowed multiple operators to come in, and it's working fine. I think they're up to 6 operators right now and growing. Did I answer your question? An example of two. Two gives your consumers, it gives your constituents choice. We would like to see them have more choice. So I think the study committee, Wendy, Representative Byron, they got it. They knew the hot stove was one operator. That hasn't worked. In some instances it has, but multiple operators seems to work better for the consumer.
I'm thinking the reality is that I think that the department, Commissioner Knight, wants this to work. You know, she wants to capture the black market and move it into the light. And they want this to be a thriving market. And so our decision here is about how prescriptive we want to be in terms of letting the department set up the bid process and choose the operators. And so, I think we'll take it seriously that we can look at our other markets who've done this and said, well, they either didn't capture the market or they were ill-equipped to actually handle the market. Representative Hooper has questions.
Thank you. When you first made that statement, the immediate thing that flashed through my mind was you just doubled the opportunity for somebody more. But then the don't work thing sticks in my mind. What exactly do you mean? Are there some providers that didn't have the Super Bowl on their particular app this last weekend, or what does don't work constitute? You skipped over in your presentation the examples of things.
I'll say that.
And everybody sort of putting the same sort of format of betting availabilities.
Yes, however, part of this is pricing, right? The odds pricing, for example. Different operators offer different odds. Consumers price shop, as you would expect them to do. The more sophisticated operators have the ability to provide better odds to your constituents and therefore a better product. Is that an example of how?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, and it sounded, if I can just build on Representative Hooper's question, that the operator that DC built just crashed. It couldn't handle the volume of bets.
Correct. And they're currently going through a process. They're reviewing their process and they're considering further expansion. So again, credit to the study committee. There's multiple states that have had problems with utilizing one operator. And that's why we're looking for multiple operators. So recently an operator went down, William Hill, this past Super Bowl. William Hill was an operator that also crashed on Super Bowl Sunday, but that was more recent. PointsBet, we talked about this. PointsBet is favored by golf bettors because They are affiliated, I know too much about this. They're affiliated with NBC Sports. They have a ton of data that they get from the PGA and NBC Sports. So consumers want to use PointsBet to bet on golf. So if you're a golf fan, if you're a golfer, you want that app to play. Also different products, single game parlay. Some operators offer better odds on single game parlays than other operators. And the tourism, visitors to your state, right? Everyone comes here. I come here to Leaf Peep. Everybody comes here to ski. I want to just do what I'm doing where I'm at home. Just don't make me download a new app because I'm crossing a border. More choice gives the consumer more ability to use the product. More revenue for the state.
Representative Hango, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Because you're an operator, I'll ask you this question. Do you feel that the fee structure that's set up for operators to do business in Vermont is competitive enough for us to get 4 operators who would like to be here?
I don't know yet.
Okay.
It depends how this all plays out. But I think there's cause for concern.
Because
I'm not sure the model that is contemplated will attract all of the operators that are in front of you today and others.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I think we'd like to hear from
yes, please.
Alice, who's in the room while we still have some time. We've got about another 20 minutes. And I had a couple of other questions that I might pose to all of you and see who wants to answer at the end. So I want to thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jim. Thank you, members.
And Mike, please take a hot seat.
All right.
Thanks for being with us.
Of course. Good morning. I'm Michael Venture from FanDuel, and I cover state government relations for the company in the Northeast. FanDuel is a leading sports wagering operator and the largest online real money gaming operator in the United States. We offer online sports betting in 18 states, including New York, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and we're very excited about Massachusetts in a few weeks. For the committee's reference, I just wanted to talk a bit today about the tax structure. We were looking to see if we can get a statutory tax rate within the bill. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why we think that's important right now. For the committee's reference, the majority of states that have legalized online sports wagering has a tax rate between 6.75 and 15%. Despite previous discussions of high tax rates in New York, Rhode Island, and New Hampshire, there are in fact outliers, and this is nearly triple of the national average of 19%. And this is not consistent with current trends. Since New Hampshire has legalized sports betting, every state that has legalized mobile sports wagering has included a tax rate and statute, with the exception of New York, which has generated significant concerns from the top operators for being an unsustainable model, and the tax rate is under debate by New York State Legislature right now as we speak. Despite it being in its infancy, there are already signs that New York's mobile sports wagering has ceased to grow. Handle, which is the overall number of dollars brought in before taxes, has declined on average 14% on a week-to-week comparison this time last year. That's only been being in the market for a single year. This is a trend we are not seeing in other states, and if you examine other states in their first year, usually Handle explodes, as we all are kind of getting up and running and getting folks onto the market. It is our belief that the decline in New York sports betting handle is directly linked to its high tax rate. Major operators have or are planning to scale back their marketing spending on New York because of the significant tax rate there. This has leads to less awareness of our offering and eventually will lead to less revenue for the state. We understand that it's counterintuitive to argue that lower tax rates result in more long-term revenue, but this has been the case in effectively every state that has adopted this model. Since passage of New York mobile sports wagering law, the following states have had legalized mobile sports wagering and set the tax rate in statute, as opposed to a bidding process that incentivizes unsustainable tax rates. Connecticut has a tax rate of 13 3/4. Maryland legalized last year is at 15%. Massachusetts is, as you all know, is about to come online, 15% for retail and 20% for mobile sports wagering. Kansas, which legalized sports wagering this year, has setting its tax rate at 10%. Ohio just opened up in January and opened up its tax rate at 10% as well. FanDuel is confident that if the committee permits a minimum of 4 qualified operators to operate in the state with the tax rate we're proposing of 20%, or asking for, I should say, 20% set in statute, this is consistent with current market trends. We can guarantee, or we can generate, we believe, Vermont will receive $8 to $10 million a year upon maturity of the market, which is typically 4 or 5 years out. A statutory tax rate that is consistent with current practices in terms of how states approach legalizing sports betting presents a tax revenue certainty for Vermont, otherwise not guaranteed with high share or tax models previously discussed. Equally in importance, this amount does not include licensing fees, win withholdings of bettors in Vermont that are taxable, or local economic benefits like advertising and marketing partnerships. You've heard the suggested benefits of the RFP model before, but it creates a limited market that typically sets a high tax rate and does not guarantee it will return suggested results the state has forecasted. As my colleague Rob brought up, Washington, D.C., the lottery there implemented an RFP model, and there's a monopoly on mobile sports betting to Intralot, which pays D.C. over 50% of gross gaming revenue generated from sports betting. It took 18 months after DC passed its operating law before the mobile app went live. The CFO estimated that DC would generate $92 million in 4 years. And despite the negotiated tax rate well above 50%, the city earned $0 in year 1. Year 2, $350,000, and last year DC lost $4 million. Conservative estimates suggest that had DC had generated licenses to multiple operators with a set tax rate in law, that would have generated $5 million last year. Finally, I would not be remiss without mentioning, as Rob said, last year they had a problem with the Super Bowl. The app effectively crashed, and it was fined $500,000. This is, I think, as we all know, the Super Bowl is probably the #1 sports betting day in the year. I know it's a fun day for all to watch, but that's our prime time. If we don't do well there, then we shouldn't be in the business. As JFO noted in its analysis, imposing a high tax rate will deter operators from participating in the market. This means less competition, worse sports wagering lines, and fewer promotions that attract consumers to the legal market. Thus, Vermont consumers will continue to look to legal options in neighboring states or illegal options currently available. To sum it up, we recommend that the legislature adopt a reasonable statutory tax rate of 20%, which is within current market trends, and increase the floor of qualified operators licensed or contracted by the Liquor Authority up to 4. It will help Vermont achieve its revenue goals. You will have a framework that can compete with the biggest competition, which is the illegal offshore market, and where Vermonters currently have access to dozens of online sports wagering websites that do not pay taxes, they do not offer consumer protections, and they do not provide responsible gaming measures. A reasonable tax rate will attract the leading mobile sports wagering app operators that will in turn capture more wagering activity, including from tourists that are coming from states where they have access to multiple mobile sports wagering apps, and for Vermonters that are wagering in neighboring states with competitive models. Thank you again for the opportunity today. I really do appreciate it, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, just frame up that we have largely not focused on the revenue sharing or potentially moving to a statutory tax rate conversation here, because we know that this bill's next stop is in our Ways and Means Committee. So just wanted to frame that up for the committee, Representative Hooper, and I'll go across the table.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. DC lost $4 million. How? And secondly, in the demonstration that we saw of the app earlier, do you take Social Security numbers and report winnings back to us?
Yes, we do take Social Security numbers, and winnings, are you referring to specifically, like if I make $100 bet, like that specific, or we do report to you, the revenue that comes in.
1099.
Right. Is that, I'm sorry.
It's kind of like Vegas. You win $10 million. You don't walk out the door with $10 million.
Right.
Taxes are.
Yeah. And as far as DC, I think we could provide the specifics for you there, but I believe it had something to do with effectively the operator it just doesn't, it's not working in Washington, DC at the moment. I don't cover DC.
Lost opportunity or actually lost cash to someone?
Sorry, do you know about that? Yeah.
Do you want me to come up or?
Just so that the Zoom can hear, if you want to pull up a chair even, I just want to make sure that I'm happy to have folks testify in tandem, but we're really trying to keep everything on the.
Sure.
Members of the Gov.Ops Committee, just for the record, I'm Rebecca London from DraftKings. So to answer your question, Representative, it was a combination of factors that led to a loss of revenue in DC, one of which was that in order to meet contractual obligations for money to be paid to the district, the app itself had to manipulate odds. It was less competitive than what you found in both offshore and surrounding states. So you had instances where folks were driving into into Virginia to place wagers. Or interestingly, DC launched in early 2020, and the physical sports books were actually outperforming the mobile app in the height of the COVID pandemic, because people preferred to use the retail books. So it was a combination of the contractual minimum share that the operator had to share with the district, as well as the loss was also a realized loss in that what the district paid the operator to create and set up the app, as well as did not meet revenue projections.
So some guy in a ugly hat, 2 fingers in a cigar didn't show up with a. Okay.
Correct.
Hands over here, sorry, I'm kind of losing track. Send it, Chase.
You mentioned Super Bowl specifically as the biggest event. Just for an example, I think the American Gaming Association estimated 16 billion bet on that. What percentage of that went through your corner of the industry?
My understanding is only 1 billion of that is through the legal market.
Okay.
So the other 15, I agree with your thoughts exactly. The legal market's still massive in this country. I think the American Gaming Association back in November did a whole study on it. I think it's $510 billion is still gambled in the illegal market right now.
They estimate a loss of $700 million in tax revenue.
Right.
That illegal operators are not paying.
Is that including, hey, I bet you $5 that the green shirts, whatever they were, or just?
No, it's largely from online bookies. They have their own websites. Some have made their own illegal apps at this point. It's a lot of that. It's offshore marketplaces. It's a massive market.
In the peer.
Yeah, we don't consider social wagering like that within our illegal estimates.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. Of course.
Representative Nugent.
Going back to like the problem gambling, or do you have a definition for what that looks like in terms of like per user? And do you have a sense of how much of like the profit share from this industry comes from people with those issues, and like how you handle that?
Did you restate it one more time? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
So a couple of things, like how do you define problem gambling? And then do you have a sense of the profit share for your industry that comes from that? And then how do you manage that?
Well, I think we use the term responsible gambling because we like users they are responsible for themselves to ensure that they can identify that they have a problem. We found that there's a lot of success there. FanDuel is I think an industry leader in that. If you sign onto your account, we ensure that there's guardrails in place to protecting every consumer. And we want to make sure that we have the safest gaming environment we can create. It's because, I think it's a realization that although, this is something that we feel should be legal in every state, but it's also an understanding that there are folks who probably shouldn't be playing. And we need to identify those individuals. So, we put responsible gaming right up front on all of our apps, I believe. And you could set those limits, and it's across the board in our entire company.
And there are estimates that roughly 2% of the population struggles with problem gaming. And so I don't know that we have specific estimates on how much of the industry is built on that, but we can look into that. And then in terms of definition, it's compulsive behavior, it's chasing losses. And I know you all heard from representatives from the National Council on Problem Gaming. All of our companies work really closely with NCPG to make sure that we are in line with best practices, and making sure that we can identify when individuals perhaps are tipping that scale from using our products as entertainment and into more of compulsive behavior.
Can I ask what so both of your organizations operate daily fantasy sports here in Vermont. Mm-hmm. Could you describe kind of what the size of that market is and what kind of the average person is, putting up in terms of the money they're risking in the leagues that they're participating in?
I'll take that one.
Yeah, that's fine, yeah.
So because we prepared to come talk about sports betting today, I don't have the fantasy statistics, but that's information we're happy to track down. What I would say is that, for us, we see them as two different products. Fantasy is a game of skill in that you are competing against other individuals where your knowledge of an NFL lineup or NFL players is part of whether or not you can outperform me. The difference being that in sports wagering, you're against the house. So there's more chance because the odds are set by our traders and that sort of thing. So
what I'm trying to get at, Rebecca, is yes, I understand the definition of game of skill. What is the typical person who is participating in a league putting up and risking in the participation of that league?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely, Representative. We'll pull that statistical information for you and get back to you.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course.
Wow. Those are, it's really.
It's a joint assembly, man.
Yes. Well, we've got a few more minutes.
I'm wondering if we can circle back to the legal market a little bit. That was kind of a shocking number that it's still attracting that many people. So do you know what is it about that market that's still so attractive that people aren't switching over to your operators, or is it just still the legality of it that's just not legal?
Sure. Thank you, Representative. So it's the legality of it. I mean, if you think in states like California, Texas, Florida, it's not legal right now. And, you're talking about most of the country still is not under a legal market at this point. And that's something we really do want to advocate for, because when we come into a state, it ensures that there's boundaries in place, that there's safety in place, and that we do create that. And to the point on competition from before, the reason why we want to see more operators in the state is we found that competition is good. It means that we're all competing against each other to trying to get more, folks out of the illegal market and onto the legal marketplace.
I would also say that, we characterize it as 36 states have legalized some form of gaming, sports betting, but not all of those have legalized online sports wagering. And so the illegal market continues to have that advantage in other states where the convenience of being able to wager from your phone is enticing to those individuals. And that what we find is that 85 to 90% of wagers are placed via the internet. So while we are in state one, as Mike pointed out, we're not yet in the largest states in the country. So that significant portion is not yet captured in the legal market. And then there's still work to be done in other states where mobile may not be accessible to individuals.
Thank you.
Representative Chase.
I'm not sure anybody's asked it yet. I think we lost the fellow from Caesars. I would ask all four of you, based on what you've seen so far, do you expect that your organization would be interested and eager in participating in the market in Vermont based on what we've?
I think at this point, we would like to see what a final product looks like. I think that's fair to say. The bills change and stuff is fluid. So, I could tell you it's a set tax rate is something that's important, and a high tax rate is something that is bad for the marketplace. And that's the way the bill is currently worded, it can allow for that, and that's concerning. It kind of depends. Maybe. We'll have to see.
So from our perspective, there are two things, and I know your committee is not taking up the tax rate piece. But for us, we do have concerns about lack of statutory tax rate, given that through an RFP process, it could be that, some guy in his basement who decides to launch a sports betting app comes out, and Director Charlie McIntyre from the New Hampshire Lottery talked about that in front of the study committee last fall, where they may bid, yeah, we can promise you 60% revenue share, and we would be required to match that, which frankly is unlikely to be a sustainable business model for us to come to the state. And so would seriously question whether we could make money in that environment, both for ourselves and for the state. And then there was a question earlier about licensing fees. And while we completely understand the need to run the department, we also see licensing fees typically around the $50,000 to $100,000 licensing fees on an annual basis in states. And so those two factors would give us some hesitation currently. But for us, the rest of the bill is very much in line with industry practice and would have no concerns, including the problem gaming pieces and advertising pieces.
Okay. And for MGM?
I think I said it earlier, Representative, as we see it right now, we're cautious, we'd be cautious, and we'll wait and see how it works out.
Okay.
Both things, the number of operators and the tax rate is critically important to us, how the market looks when the bill is finished.
Okay.
The high tax rate is something that, the president of my company and the president of Rebecca's company testified about in the New York State Legislature 2 weeks ago, and you could look it up there as well. FanDuel right now is the market leader in New York, I think with 45% of the marketplace, and we are barely turning a profit, if at all. That's nothing to say about other operators that have less of a percentage of the market share from there. So because we spend money on advertising, we spend money on getting folks acquired onto the platform and all that. There are costs associated with running in every respective state.
Okay.
Thank you everyone for the great conversation and for bringing the perspective of some operators today. We'll definitely be in touch, and I imagine seeing you again when the bill comes back around. So we're going to adjourn and go to the